Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this week's edition of the Petty and Ill-Informed podcast, where we venture our petty and ill-informed opinion on, whatever comes up. Joining me, as always, from 27 Twycross Road, Kent, Tom. How are you?
Well, I don't live there, but I'm certainly not going to say where I do live.
Again.
Well, people have already probably got a pretty good idea. I haven't had Gary take a plane and turn up at my front door or anything, so maybe it is a secret.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want Gary turning up at your front door.
I'm sure I overestimate my own importance there, but hey.
So, did you have a fun week?
No.
Absolutely. How did your week go?
Well, what happened was some Einstein decided to blow the whistle on the fact that I'm changing jobs and proudly announced it to a parent and said parent proudly told me. And that has meant we've had to really expedite the process of telling the other parents and the kids because the cat seemed to be rapidly emerging from the bag.
That's good, no?
It also led to. They also inadvertently. It just led to various complications that we had to manage. Manage them. We did. Well, we were going to, but it led to a very regrettable conversation with my class because the day we were supposed to tell them was yesterday. And what happened was my son decided to have a massive accident at school, fall over playing football, be at the bottom of a big heap of people or something, enough to damage his wrist and damage his wrist and his jaw and his shoulder. And because he's a haemophiliac, he had to. We had to go to A&E, and had to get special medicine for him.
Tom, if you say one more time, I'm going to drive down to London and electrocute your balls.
Okay, I will not then. Right, concentrate then. What happened was
You didn't even make 30 seconds.
No, I didn't. I failed. No, what happened was Daniel had to have this medicine shipped across from Canterbury. And long story short, we were at A&E until 10 p.m. last night. But that did lead to me having the opportunity to sit through and reread the highlights of the book about Stalingrad and take all the relevant notes. Stick post-it notes in various bookmarks in my book. So there we are. I was able to make reasonably good use of the time sat in the car with our other son outside, whilst Hannah and Daniel got themselves sorted out in Margate A&E. So it's been a lot of fun. I think I just said again, didn't I?
You've said it like 900 times.
Oh shit. Well, hopefully I will be a bit more decisive when I'm delivering on the subject of the week. We can only hope.
Also, hilariously, putting a bunch of post-it notes in your book is also the title of your sex tape. So,
well, that's news to me, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Anyway, so those of you who are waiting with bated breath for an update on the shelter situation, it's been a 3-week-long arc at this point. Bad news. The shelter I had previously built that I showed you the pictures of was blown down. We've had high winds and high rain. Everyone always says, oh, the Lake District is beautiful. Oh, I love the beautiful Lake District. Yeah, that's tourists that come here in the summer. In the winter, this is the worst place on earth. But it was blown down, so I had to start again. I went this time with a triangle shape because a triangle is the strongest shape in nature. So we can see a nice little beginning here. That's the original, and that's the frame that I started with.
Oh, move over, Bear Grylls. There's a new sheriff in town.
And after I built that frame, I decided to reinforce it just for extra protection. Here we go. This was at the end. This was Wednesday night, I believe. This is like 3 o'clock, and you can see it's already getting dark. But yeah, so I put together a nice little frame, these pieces of wood, that top thing sitting on them, and the triangle bits, and it's all tied together for extra strength. So yeah, that's looking good. And today, this is what it looks like right now. I checked on it less than an hour ago with a torch, so I know it's still standing. And this is what it looks like now. So I've built a frame of willow. I'm going to have to put horizontal pieces up and down it to make it sturdier, and then I'm going to put dead leaves and sand over the top, so for extra protection. And then one of these ends is going to be the fireplace, and the other end is going to be the entrance.
Okay, what is this actually for, may I ask?
Not for anything. You've got me doing it now. It's about 5'5", Gabby. It's a little shorter than me. So basically, I started watching bushcraft videos. I found this bloke in either Norway or Denmark. I'm not sure which one he's in, and my Norwegian mates don't know if it's Norway or Denmark either. But he's made these very interesting bushcraft. You know, he goes out into the woods, he's got an axe, he's got a pickaxe, he builds these shelters. And I was watching it thinking, well, you know, I've got an axe and a pickaxe. I think I could do this. It turns out I can't do it as well as he could. But, you know, I'm trying it. I really want to see if I can build one and spend the night in it and be all right. And winter's a good time, especially up here, to test that hypothesis. So tomorrow's supposed to be really nice as well. I'm hoping to get out there and make it a lot more airtight. And hopefully start on the fireplace. And I've got me wood bow. What do you call it? A fire bow? No, a bow for making a fire. I've done it before. It takes ages, and it's hell on your wrists. But can't love my sex tape. But it can be. It's not as hard as you think to make fire with a bow.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just over a meter. It's 1.3 meters covered.
So trying to make it airtight is hell on your wrists.
No, trying to make the fire. With the wood bow.
I was leaning towards some very bad pun there, and I don't know where it was going, but you steering me off course can only be a good thing.
No, good. You know how to make fire with a wood bow?
Nope.
Well, you know the rubbing two sticks together thing?
Yeah.
It's basically that. You take a stick, you dig a groove in it, you put some lint or clippings, you take your axe and you whittle a piece of wood until you get to the middle of the dry bit, and then you put that in the middle of the wood that you cut a hole in, and then you put another wood on top of that, and then you wrap that around the bow, and then you make a wanking motion until you build up enough friction to create an ember.
And hopefully that actually ignites.
It does ignite. I've done it before. That's how cavemen used to do it back in the day.
Well,
I mean, I've got flint as well if you want to be a cheaty pig, but
I don't know. That using a flint doesn't sound like a cop out to me. Whipping out a Zippo and a B&Q firelighter might be a bit of a cop out, but I don't think a flint is.
No. Making a fire is easy. It's just getting the ember. That's the hard part. There's several ways of doing it. The wood bow, flint. If you wear glasses, you can use glasses, of course, to create an ember. But once you've got the ember, you put it into a nice little handful of dry wood clippings, like sawdust. You just blow on it, and then you get flame, and then you just put as much wood on it as possible, little pieces of wood, as dry as possible, and you got yourself a nice wood. Making a fire is actually the easy part.
So it's well, you've certainly got all the tools for your post-apocalyptic stroke zombie survival kit.
Yeah, no, I'm not one of those people that wants to survive the apocalypse. I'm just going to melt with the masses and get it over with. There's no point in outliving humanity.
But that's that. I actually agree with you on that one. I mean, if the worst came to the worst, I mean, I've seen the road, and I'm in league with the mum on that one. Yes, we can survive. I don't want to just survive.
No.
Getting by on a day-to-day basis and prolonging the agony and misery of your life does seem rather futile to me.
But yeah, I've just been watching bushcrafting videos, and I decided I wanted to try it.
Bushcrafting videos. It sounds like your porn collection again to me.
Did you mean title of your sex tape?
No, that's called airtight and sore wrists.
Okay.
Oh, we're really scraping the barrel.
Well, you are. I'm trying to connect with my viewers about something I'm passionate about. So, Tom, you claim to be an expert on Stalingrad.
I believe so. Yeah. So let's get rolling then. As the German panzers did across the Russian steppe, as we shall see. Hopefully, it will happily share a Chrome tab, and will let me put that in full screen. Okay. So. There we are. That's nice. So these are the two books which have been my Bible for this. On the left, Stalin Grad by Anthony Beaver. He's a historian who lives relatively local to me. It's a fabulous book. And that book, the Historical Atlas of World War II, absolutely fascinated me. I made such a song and dance of it at Hannah's parents' house once that they decided to just give it up and give it to me as a one-off gift. So my plan of
sorry, did you just say you threw a hissy fit at your wife's parents' house until they gave you a book? Is that something you're proud of?
Well, I was over enthusiastic to the point of it being nearly. It was over enthusiasm to the level of passive aggression. How much I like this book. We'll put it that way. Okay, so there was nothing passive about the aggression of the German army. Okay, so first of all, very quick bit of background. World War II is 1940, and Hitler had always intended to attack the USSR. He was always going to do this. It was set out in Mein Kampf. A crucial part of Nazi ideology was the idea of Aryan supremacy over races such as the Slavs, as Hitler and his.
Say one more time. Say it one more motherfucking time. I dare you. I double dog dare you.
I don't even know I'm doing it. It's so firmly rooted in my subconscious. So I will nonetheless make an effort not to. Hitler and the Nazis were hell-bent on conquering the USSR, despite the failure of every general that had tried to do it throughout history, not least Napoleon, and it was something they were always going to do. Lebensraum in the East was German destiny, as they believed. Now, why does the Battle of Stalingrad, you can see down here, why did they, and does this battle capture my imagination so much? Well, the sheer brutality was absolutely unfathomable. Now, this is a very interesting table from reliable as ever Wikipedia. This is the in list of battles by death toll. Only the siege of Leningrad, which lasted a lot longer, had a higher death toll. In 6 months, 2.5 million people, soldiers and civilians, died during this. Pardon me, during this battle. It was absolutely terrible. So I'm going to try and tell this tale in 4 parts. It started when it was 1941. Bollocks! I did it again. Fucking hell. It was a delayed start because Hitler had decided to conquer the Balkans, which became, countries like Serbia, Croatia, Albania. He decided to conquer all of those places, and Greece, delaying the start of the attack into Russia. Nonetheless, he caught Stalin totally napping, and as this map shows, the panzers and the German army started off with terrible or brilliant, depending on your point of view, success. The massive swathes of the Red Army were encircled. They were terribly badly organized. The Russians had totally taken off guard, very poor communications. The speed and the communications of the German army were firing on all cylinders. Blitzkrieg worked to perfection. It did gradually slow down, and in the winter of 1940, they were stopped short of Moscow here. The front line here is probably about October 1940. And then, so after a terrible frozen winter, the front line was pretty stable going into the spring of 1941, where Stalin expected an attack on Moscow, but Hitler caught them totally by surprise when, instead of attacking up here, he attacked south down here towards he aimed for the oil fields of Grozny and the city that bore Stalin's name, Stalingrad. So by 1940, here is Operation Blue, the attack into the south of Russia. And you can see by the summer of 1941, the German army had reached the River Volga. They were pressing into the Caucasus towards modern day Azerbaijan. And let's have a look at some of we'll start with the treatment of civilians. I read from page 45 of Anthony Beevor's book. A German officer described how shocked he and his soldiers had been when Russian civilians had cheerfully stripped the corpses of their fellow countrymen. Yet German soldiers were taking clothes and boots from living civilians for themselves, then forcing them out into the freezing wastes, in most cases to die of cold and starvation. Senior officers complained that their soldiers looked like Russian peasants, but no sympathy was spared for the victims robbed of their only hope of survival in such conditions. A bullet might have been far less cruel. During the retreat from Moscow, German soldiers had seized any livestock and food supplies on which they could lay their hands. They ripped up floorboards in living rooms to check for potatoes stored underneath. Furniture and parts of houses were used for firewood. Never did a population suffer so much from both sides in a war. Stalin had signed an order on the 17th of November ordering Red Army units, aviation, artillery, ski troops, and partisan detachments to destroy and burn to ashes all houses and farmlands for up to 40 miles behind the German lines to deny the enemy shelter. The fate of Russian women and children was not considered for a moment. And this sort of brutality became miserably and terribly commonplace. There was prisoners of war camps in throughout the conflict were no better. So from 1940 throughout the start of 1941, in all these areas down here that were captured that were taken by the Germans, they built these makeshift prisoners of war camps that were absolutely horrible. At one point, when the Russians later liberated one of these camps, appalling conditions were revealed. Red Army prisoners were dying of cold, of starvation, and brutal maltreatment. Now, the so-called camps had no huts, just open ground and a barbed wire fence. 18,000 men in one camp were fed with 12 cauldrons.
Stop. You've got to take breaks so we can discuss what you've talked about. Okay?
Can I just get to the end of this paragraph, and then I've actually got a break. I've got a break planned.
Okay.
And then we'll get there. And if it's okay, we'll talk collectively about the appalling treatment of both prisoners of war and civilians. The so-called camp had no huts, open ground and barbed wire fence. 18,000 men fed from 12 cauldrons in which odd hunks of horseflesh were boiled. And so it went on. The atrocities on both sides were terrible. The great links were made to the Russian Civil War, one of the cruelest of the 20th century conflicts, which Hitler's crusade against Bolshevism had reignited. Russian outrage and a terrible desire for revenge was fired much more by news of German acts in occupied territories than by anything they were doing on the front line. Villages burnt to the ground in reprisals, civilians starved, massacred, and deported to work camps. So the Russians were often blamed their own civilians for collaborating, and their treatment of their own people was equally appalling. It had always been this way. That many Russians despised Stalin, but the brutality of the Wehrmacht and the German armies coming in meant that any chance for sort of collaboration or a general uprising was utterly quashed by the brutalities of the German army. Everyone was absolute scum to the Russian civilians, it seems.
Are you done? Can we talk now?
Yes, you may.
Okay. Thing is, though, right? After Ukraine, fuck Russia. So, and yeah, it might have been part of Hitler's plan to invade Russia right after, allying with the Japanese and starting a war with the Americans. Questionable timing.
Well, I think that happened in December of 1941. So it was, it was right in the heart of all of this. That I think it was the 7th of December or something. Japan bombed Pearl Harbor. But yes, unconvinced that he had his hands full with. Did it again. Totally unconvinced that he had his hands full with the Russians, believing that it was only a matter of time before they were beaten. He did indeed declare war on America in allegiance with Japan. German people back at home must have been thinking, what the actual fuck is this maniac doing? Or have been
I've always said that we didn't win World War II. Hitler lost World War II, which is an important distinction. And it's these sorts of questionable tactical decisions that, make me really believe that. He should have secured Europe, including England, before invaded Russia. He should have, conquered England, called it a victory, waited a couple of years, rebuilt his forces, and then attacked Russia. And just not sided with the Japanese at all, because that was a terrible decision.
Oh, and they never even worked closely strategically.
No,
they really didn't. Oh, it was god awful.
Hirohito was possibly the only person more crazy than Hitler on the entire planet.
Well, it was so. I mean, he wasn't just a terrible human being for the destroyed so many lives and ruined the entire world, he also totally destroyed himself and the country he claimed to love.
Well, but so did Stalin.
Oh God, yeah. Boy, I mean,
I
all of this.
mean, I mean, people say because of the Holocaust and everything that Hitler was like the worst person ever, but Stalin was a lot worse than Hitler was, just because he didn't target a specific portion of his population. He killed like 3 times the amount of people that Hitler did, like civilians, not
Oh yeah.
military.
Oh, absolutely.
Stalin was an absolute shitcunt of a human being.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned earlier how much they hated him. His efforts to collectivize farms in the 1930s led to people being so starved and so hungry that they literally ate their own children. I mean, it was staggering. And his purges of the Red Army's leadership were one of the biggest reasons that the country was totally unprepared and was totally on the back foot. And they were in the situation that you can see on the map right now in the first place. It was abysmal.
Gabby, you're unusually quiet. You got anything to add?
Oh, I'm boring us senseless as usual.
No, my mic is quick. Hello?
Hello. We can all hear you, Gabby. Oh, man, let me unmic you. Oh, no, you chose to mute yourself.
Okay, let me try one more time.
There you go. We can hear you.
I don't know. I also want to throw in Pol Pot. He was a pretty mad psycho.
Oh God.
He also killed like 25 million people. I don't know. I don't really speak a lot on World War II. I have some conspiracy theories in my head about it. It was awful time.
Go for it. We are petty and ill-informed. Let's hear it.
Yeah.
Actually, I believe the Holocaust now to have been a holy grail hunt. If you believe in the bloodline of Christ, if Christ can't die, then it would stand to reason that his bloodline has some kind of anti-murder clause. And so how do you find someone who can't be murdered? You start murdering a lot of people. And, once you get into like all the prophecies that they hide, we only get like a quarter of the Bible. And I'm sure it's cleaned out of a lot of the prophecies in it. I think there's a lot more information that they're hiding from us. I don't know. That's my conspiracy. Hitler was all about the religious relics. He went and found the spear of Longinus, and he was, isn't that the whole plot of the Ark of the Lost Covenant, Indiana Jones movie? The Nazis looking for religious relics. So, I mean, like, when I read the Holy Blood, Holy Grail book, in the prologue, they were talking about going to the, whatever library in France, the National Library in France or whatever, where they found all their research. And they were like, it was almost like it was already all put together, like someone else had, like, put it all together. In which case, Hitler would have had a lot of access to that and all of his Nazis. And 40 years later, we got Holy Blood, Holy Grail with the idea of there being a Jesus bloodline. I don't know.
So to put it in perspective, Hitler killed about 10 million civilians. Stalin killed 128 million.
128 million?
Yeah.
Wow.
The guy was a nut job.
The only real thought I had, I am of Slavic descent, Czechoslovakian, Bohemian, and my mom and uncle are involved with the Czech fraternal life here in America, and they every once in a while send out articles. And there was an article about Lidice in there in Czechoslovakia, and they didn't use bullets on my people. They said we weren't even worth bullets. They would bayonet us at the base of the skull.
It beggars belief. It's so hard to imagine what possesses people or what possessed people to do this and to be this racist to this endemic catastrophic level. You just can't fathom it. You just can't believe human beings are capable of these things, and yet they still are to this
Still
day.
are. We do it all day, every day. When we pulled out of Afghanistan, look at what happened. That's exactly what all those people were clinging onto the bottom of airplanes to try to escape. Saddam Hussein, his kids, Uday and Qusay, I guess, got giant industrial paper shredders, and they would throw people in feet first so they could listen to them scream. And just just, it's like it doesn't even matter. Religious, political, resources, money, it's all, it's just like if you can find a divide and dehumanize that other person, life is cheap.
As a person who has repaired a lot of people paper shredders, I have to believe that putting a person in there would cause some sort of jam.
Industrial size, though.
Yeah, even so, I mean, a person, there's a lot going on there, bone and muscle and tissue. I don't see that as being feasible. There would be a jam. Could you imagine getting jammed in a paper shredder halfway through so like you couldn't bleed out?
Oh.
I freaked myself out there. I went too far with that joke.
No, we got it.
So let's move on, if we may, into the battle itself. So
we did it. What side are we rooting for? Stalin or Hitler? Which side are we on?
It's one of those. It's like
the good guy.
It's the tagline to Alien versus Predator. No matter who wins, we lose. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can see here the Stalingrad itself. The on this area is the West Bank, and almost the entirety of the city is on the West Bank. The Germans came in here, and the Russians were sending ships across the River Volga to reinforce and resupply, and the level of street fighting, the brutality of it, all the German strengths counted for nothing in here. In their strategies of blitzkrieg, of lightning war, meant nothing in the confines of the house-to-house, floor-to-floor fighting. So I'll read a little bit more from the book, if I may. German generals do not seem to have imagined what awaited their divisions in the ruined city. Ruined by them and their own bombers. It started on the 23rd of August, which just happens to be my birthday, in the year 1942. I think I might have had the years wrong all the way along. Whenever I've said 1940 and then 41, I think I've meant 41 and 42, but never mind. German generals do not seem to have imagined what awaited their divisions in the ruined city. They lost their blitzkrieg advantages, were in many ways thrown back to the First World War techniques. And though their military theorists argued that trench warfare had been an aberration in the art of war, they found themselves having no choice but to resort to such tactics. The fighting in Stalingrad was even more terrible than anything that had happened in World War I. Well, arguably. Close quarter combat in ruined buildings, bunkers, cellars and sewers was soon dubbed Rattenkrieg by the German soldiers. It possessed, I believe that translates as rat war or something like that. It possessed a savage intimacy which appalled their generals. The enemy is invisible. Ambushes out of basements, wall remnants, hidden bunkers and factory ruins produce heavy casualties among our troops. And the snipers, which are something of Russian legend, totally brought down morale. Germans could just be walking along perfectly innocently, and then one of their number just collapses dead, victim of a perfect sniper shot. Their tanks, powerful as their panzers were, could do almost nothing in the streets that their bombers, had ruined. So let's have a quick look at. It just seems to get. When I was reading this book, this Anthony Beaver book. Every time you think it's hit rock bottom, it finds a way to get and worse and worse.
I mean, it wasn't just
For
the
example, although
Russian
shelter was
snipers, was it?
first priority, civilians faced the virtual impossibility of finding food and water. Each time there was a lull in the bombardments, women and children appeared out of holes in the ground to cut slabs of meat off dead horses before homeless dogs and rats stripped the carcasses. The chief foragers were children, younger, smaller, and more agile, and presented less of a target. German soldiers made use of Stalingrad orphans themselves. Daily tasks such as filling water bottles were dangerous when Russian snipers lay in wait for any moment. So, for the promise of a crust of bread, they would get the Russian boys and girls to take their water bottles down to the Volga's edge to fill them. When the Soviet side realized what was happening, Red Army soldiers shot their own children, their country's children, on such missions. Charming.
Well, I mean, it's war. You're going to do what you're going to do.
But that was Stalin's rationale, and for people,
But it's not like we didn't do anything dodgy during the war. I mean, we let Coventry get bombed to fuck, and we knew that was going to happen. I mean, you're fighting for your very existence. You've got to make tough decisions.
well, that's I watched a documentary recently about the Lancaster bomber and the decision to. The only way they could attack the Germans at that time was to mass carpet bomb to the extent of all-consuming firestorms in in towns like most notoriously cities like Dresden.
Yeah, Dresden bombing is one of the worst. It's up there with Hiroshima in terms of civilian casualty.
Oh, absolutely.
It's war. It's war.
This photograph,
It's a horror. It's horrible. It's horrible. Don't get me wrong, but you got to make questionable decisions in order to win. You got to lose certain battles. You got to win the war. And
well, I mean, they that order was given because they had to stop the Germans at any cost,
and they had to be stopped. I mean, D-Day, a lot of fuss is made of D-Day, but basically it was just sending wave after wave after wave of troops until the Germans ran out of ammo and we could take that beach.
Certainly true of Omaha Beach, yeah. Now, if I just return to this map a while later, the Germans threw, I showed earlier, the Germans threw everything into Stalingrad. The Russian resistance was so dogged, Hitler threw everything at it. And all these, all the German resources were piled into this city. He believed that the Russians were doing the same thing, but he was wrong. He underestimated them. The Russians were building up their reserves here and here. And what happened after that was, oh, damn it. I haven't got the bloody map picture that I wanted. I don't know how I've managed to miss that one off, pillock that I am. Well, what Hitler was so single-mindedly determined to do it. Oh God, how did I miss out one? I didn't check my own bloody work. I've missed out the map that I absolutely needed. Bugger me. Just quickly grab it, shove it in.
C minus.
Yeah, absolutely. Total teacher fail.
Missing critical information.
Critical need to know information.
Terribly.
And this is
quite
what he
frankly,
does for a living.
This is the map I need. How did I miss this out? Bloody inexcusable. So this was the counterattack. What happened was the Russians piled in here, and they totally cut off the city of Stalingrad. And so,
okay, where is this in relation on that other map? I was used to the other map, and now this one doesn't make any sense to me.
It's from the same book, helpfully. So the Russians came in here and cut off Stalingrad. That is my wife phoning me, telling me I'm being far too motherfucking loud.
Okay, I see it now. There's that river. Is that the Volga River?
It's here. It's well, Stalingrad and the Volga River is there. They are on different scales, unhelpfully, and that's my fault.
No, it's all right. When you click back, I got it now. Okay.
Okay. So
God,
I'm gonna
it's
have
that
to
little nose part there.
Gonna have to keep it down. I've totally woken up the missus.
Yikes.
This is a particularly pitiful effort from me this evening. Jesus Christ.
It's wartime. Gotta get excited.
Yeah. What happened? So what happened was guys, I have seriously pissed off my wife. Shit. I've woken her up. She's exhausted as it is. Oh, bless her. I'll make peace and apologize later.
Oh man, that's gonna need some roses.
I need something. Oh well.
She and I are exact opposites. You usually put me to sleep.
God. I think I've gone down from a C- to a grade F for sure. Fucking hell. Anyway. Oh, bloody. So
I love how his voice has changed its tenor. He's trying so hard right now. The damage is done, mate. You're in the doghouse.
Oh, I know I am, but what can I do? So let's persevere. Let's persevere.
Persevere.
Title of your sex tape.
Jesus Christ.
That's so perfect.
What happened? What happened now?
Wake up.
What happened then? So it's now Christmas 1942.
And they all play soccer?
No.
Oh.
Not this time. Absolutely not.
That was with the British.
That was World War One. As you can see from this plane, the Germans believed they could hold Stalingrad and eventually break through to relieve Stalingrad. You can see these arrows here and here indicate their attempts to get back to Stalingrad and relieve General Paulus and the Sixth Army that was trapped here in this what was called the Kessel or the Cauldron of Stalingrad. But the attempts to resupply from air were pitiful. They were absolutely miserable. So I'll just read. Life here in the freezing cold, starving, and running out of ammunition, supplies, and everything were beyond sorry. Let's have a look. Okay. Red Army soldiers took predictable pleasure in taunting the enemy who had so recently taunted them. Some companies set out a patrol at night with a scarecrow dressed up as Hitler. They erected it in no man's land and hung a placard inviting them to shoot at it. The scarecrow would be booby-trapped with a couple of grenades in case a German officer sent out a patrol to remove it the next night. They organised propaganda to be blasted out on loudspeakers, and for hours on end, the loudspeakers blasted out tango music and messages
to
remind the
believers
of their hopeless position, doing everything they could to pile on the misery.
Oh, this sounds like amazing warfare. Is it psychological warfare?
Oh,
is that what they call this?
It wasn't even their best tactic.
Too bad there wasn't hip-hop music.
The best tactic from the Russians during this whole conflict was undeniably their scorched earth tactic of torching railroads and highways and stuff and leaving the Germans no way to reinforce their position. I mean, you say what you like about the Russians, but their generals were tactical geniuses. Mm-hmm. And they were fighting in the winter, which was their home turf.
Okay. So, moving on, once these where's it hiding? This one. Once these attempts to
That's
relieve
the same map.
Yes, but once these attempts to relieve the German army failed, they were doomed. It was only a matter of time. And in January
Yeah.
of 1943, Stalin turned the screw, and
Yeah.
he his armies piled on piled in, shrinking the Kessel more and more, as you can see from the rapidly diminishing front line. Now, what do you think life was like at these airfields within the cauldron?
Terrible.
Awful.
The worst ever.
It was
Like being forced to watch Teletubbies.
No, it was absolutely disastrous. It was catastrophic.
It was a real good time.
No, absolutely not. The everything. Let's have a look from the book. Okay, the lack of fuel in available meant evacuation of the wounded was more difficult than ever. Incapacitated patients who'd been piled up in trucks, then ground to a halt due to lack of fuel, just froze to death in the open. Soldiers with blue-back faces who reached Potomnik Airfield were shaken by the scene. The airfield was chaos. Heaps of corpses, which men had carried out the bunkers and tents to house the wounded, were just dumped. Mangled ruins of aircraft and trucks littered the ground. There was even reports of when a plane would land, they would be absolutely swarmed. They'd be absolutely swarmed with people desperate to get on and get the hell out of there. Planes would take off with people clinging to their wings, when their hands became so frostbitten they would fall off and plummet to their death, which you might argue was actually an act of mercy. It was beyond belief. On the 30th of January, Goering made a broadcast which was received on the radios for people in Stalingrad. It was a national broadcast. The German soldiers had to listen to their own funeral speech. Goering had made a massive broadcast comparing the sacrifice of the Sixth Army to the Spartans in Thermopylae. The fact that it was Goering, of all people, delivering said funeral speech piled insult upon injury. Goering's voice was instantly recognized. "Turn it up," somebody shouted. "Switch it off," yelled the others, cursing him. So that was just the ultimate insult. And so I think it was about the 3rd of February, Paulus finally surrendered, and German presence in Stalingrad was no more. As for the scorched earth policy, what happened? The prisoners of war that were taken, I think it was about 90,000. They were frog marched to camps elsewhere in Russia, and the Germans took great pride in deliberately housing them in roofless, ruined buildings along the way, which were ruined by German bombers, saying, "You did this, it's your fault, you haven't got a roof tonight. We hope you good luck trying to survive."
That's
And
brilliant.
then one of my absolutely possibly the most single torrid detail, when they're in these prison camps. This is German soldiers in Russian prisoner of war camps. The cumulative effect of exhaustion, cold, sickness, and starvation dehumanized prisoners in other ways. With dysentery rife, those who collapsed and fell into the hellhole of the latrines were left to drown if still alive. Few had the strength or will to put them out. Their terrible fate below was ignored. The needs of others suffering from dysentery to use the latrine was far too urgent. That's pretty special. I mean, words
It's
fake.
like the best thing I've ever heard in my whole life.
What, that when
I mean,
German,
they had it coming. Let's be honest.
when German soldiers fell down a latrine and were drowning in shit, the other soldiers would merely shit upon them.
Yep, that's perfect.
Got to be done.
It's in this. It's
I mean, like, what do you say to that?
not a lot. Not a lot at all.
Maybe their water was from lead pipes. Maybe the Russians got water from lead pipes like the Romans. I don't know.
So
Fucking
here is
crazy.
Goering
Well, that's
himself. This is Goering. He was head of the German Air Force, the one who insisted it would have been possible to resupply the army from air. Bullshit. He was there busy by his warm fire giving that speech, celebrating the sacrifice or trying to honor the sacrifice of people who hadn't been dead, who weren't even dead yet. Charming. And that is General Paulus, who was in charge of the German Sixth Army. The massive criticism of him, and just to annoy Richard, we'll go back to this map one more time. If there was ever a chance for the German army to save themselves, it would have been when von Manstein was attempting Operation Winter Storm to relieve them. He refused to break out and try and meet them halfway because he didn't have the orders from Hitler to do so, and instead condemned he and his 90,000 other men to a fate worse than death, i.e. a face of drowning in shit while being shat on by your comrades.
That's worse than death?
Well, it's quite a way to go.
So I don't know. And to be honest, that's not the worst way to die I've heard this week. I like true crime, and they blast it all over on the over the airwaves, the broadcast television. And I was talking with Tony, and he goes, every time I hear a story that's like, oh my God, how could it get any worse? It's like, there's like this challenge. It's almost like a challenge. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, here comes another story where it's like, oh, you thought that was bad. Wait till you hear this shit, And I don't know. What do you even say to something like this? Can we fast forward to the end when Hitler did the decent thing and broke into the Fuhrer bunker and killed Hitler?
Speaking of conspiracy theories.
Who do we believe broke it? Who was that who did that, Gabby?
Hitler.
Well, Hitler killed himself.
Hitler did the decent thing and killed Hitler?
Well,
you think about that for a few minutes. Conspiracy theory time, Richard.
I don't think that Hitler killed himself.
I don't think so either.
I think Allied forces found him and shot him.
Oh, you don't think he escaped to Brazil?
No, I think he was definitely dead, but I don't think he killed himself. I think either the Russians got to him first, didn't they? So
why would they try to hide it?
Well, he was supposed to stand trial, wasn't he?
No,
they made a big deal.
They denied the whole world the justice of watching him tried and hanged.
At the ass end of World War II, a lot of promises were made, and one of them was that Hitler was going to stand trial for his war crimes. I genuinely believe Russians found him, shot him dead. And I don't blame them for that. I don't think he killed himself.
I think, I don't know, I think it would have been, even before social media, it might have been hard to keep that one under wraps. I think he'd have been given the Colonel Gaddafi treatment.
It would have just been too salty. Like, it was the Russian irregulars. No, not the Russian regulars that got to him. It would have been squads of 2. They found him. They shot him. They were like, no, we found him. He was dead. Because that's an interesting thing. 1943, Hitler's balls deep in Russia. End of 1944, there's Russian boots in Berlin, which is really just a testament to the Russian resolve. A lot of people say that America bailed us out of World War II. I say no, Russia did.
Well, Russia took the brunt of Hitler's
Yeah,
of the Germans' full power, and eventually, Stalingrad was the turning point. That was, where it wasn't the final turning point, but it was the biggest one. It was the first major defeat upon the German army. The following major battle in mid 1943, Battle of Kursk, that was after that. That was it. So it's kind of like those two. Stalingrad was where the German army was stopped, and then at Kursk, the Russian army beat them again, and then Hitler never had the initiative. Once the Germans lost the Battle of Kursk, they knew that most of their generals knew that's it. We're doomed. We are not going to be able to beat Russia. We are the next after Napoleon who are going to suffer. We're fucked.
yeah, well, yeah, because Napoleon made the same mistake. But
one of the worst things about not one of the worst things is that you can't categorize Hitler's events from the appalling nature of Hitler from best to worst. But one thing that I think is actually worthy of note is that Hitler was totally prepared to see all of Germany go down with him in a giant funeral pyre to his ego. And there's a brilliant film about that. It's one of the best films I've ever seen. It's called Downfall, and it's about the last 2 weeks of Hitler's life, where he just sees himself as a massive martyr to his own dream of a greater Germany, and he would be prepared to take every single last German down the grave with him. It was absolutely appalling.
But we all get to own cars because of them.
Mm. Oh, Richard's managed to cut out, so party. His internet stream. Oh, sorry. It seems to be in and out.
Yay, you're back.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just find the whole battle, the barbarity of it, the enormity of it, the scale of it, just something so compelling. Stalingrad is joint first place, my best book I've ever read.
I gotta admire the Russians' tactics throughout the war. I mean, they pulled no punches. Fighting a war, it calls for a certain amount of ruthlessness, and if you're not prepared to go that extra mile, then you will lose. I mean, we saw that in Vietnam. Viet Cong were willing to do things the Americans weren't, and that's why they won. In the Revolutionary War, there's another good example. One side that's prepared to go the full distance, that's prepared to make the difficult calls, like burn our own railways, burn our own roads, shoot our own children. It sounds so undeniably cruel and awful, but that's war. You got to make tough calls in war, and it wasn't just the Russians. Like I pointed out, the Coventry bombing, Dresden bombing. Our generals made tough calls. Yeah, our generals made awful calls as well. But that's war. You got to make the tough call. And the Russians were prepared to do it, and that's why the Germans lost. That, and because they invaded right at the beginning of winter, what was he even thinking?
It was late in the year. They didn't invade in the beginning of winter. They invaded. It was that 6 weeks. What Hitler's army would have given to have had those 6 weeks back when it came to the winter of 1941, and they were trapped and frozen outside Moscow. Yeah, it was a massive miscalculation. I mean, overconfidence was Hitler's biggest
Yeah,
was
no,
one of his biggest downfalls. He was his own worst enemy in so many
yeah,
levels.
I've said it before, I'll say it again. We didn't win World War II, Hitler lost it.
Yep.
And there's an important distinction because you came this close. It's like Guy Fawkes. You know, history could have taken such a radical detour.
Radical turn. What about that alternate timeline?
Yeah. Well, alternate timelines. I mean, there's the Command and Conquer Red Alert theory, where if you go back in time and kill Hitler, World War II still happens, only it's with Stalin. Which, you know, doesn't sound that ludicrous when you look at what kind of man Stalin was.
Can I ask your opinion on something?
You may ask anything you want, Gabby.
Go ahead.
So, what level of Nazi enthusiasm is concerning? Like getting a German helmet and painting a swastika on it? Or like learning German so you can be involved in World War II reenactments when you're old enough? Or like, where's the line get drawn?
I don't think there's anything wrong with enthusiasm for the Nazi party because obviously the swastika and all that stuff is associated with England, with evil. But you have to remember that Hitler came to power because Germany was fucked at the time.
Right.
If you go back in time and you kill Hitler in the 30s, he'll be remembered as a great man because Germany, the economy was in a toilet. We did not do right by them at the end of World War One. If we'd have if we'd have followed Theodore Roosevelt's plan at the end of World War One, World War Two might never have happened. Germany was screwed and desperate, and in their desperation, they turned to Hitler. And Hitler, devil is due, give him a little credit, he did rebuild Germany from nothing. He did give them purpose. He did put Germany back on the map.
Well, it's we the Western powers, every historian agrees that the seeds of Hitler were sown in the Treaty of Versailles in 1919.
Exactly.
You know, interesting fact here. When Hitler defeated, I finally got my years right. In 1940 was when Hitler defeated France.
Oh, come on. Well, everyone's defeated France. Was he won a bloody medal?
But what I was saying was when he did, he made them sign their armistice in the same railway carriage where the Germans had signed the armistice in 1918.
Yeah.
If we'd handled the end of World War One properly, World War Two never would have happened. I genuinely believe that. And I genuinely believe that if maybe someone had been around Hitler, like Julius Caesar had a bloke that followed him around whispering, "You're only a man." If Hitler had had someone like that, it could have all been avoided because until he just got high on his own bloody ego, Hitler was a great man. He could have been a great man, and
I'm not going to agree with that. He wrote Mein Kampf, and he planned death for the Jews from the 1920s.
Just hear me out, because this is an unpopular opinion. If he could have just kept his ego in check, if he could have just kept his expectations realistic, if he could just had stopped at rebuilding Germany, he would have been a great man. But it's a lesson that we need to take to heart, that people like that should not be in positions of power. People that are that egocentric, that megalomaniac. And we're seeing it right now with Vladimir Putin, because Ukraine's just the beginning.
But Richard, mate, don't forget Kristallnacht and the Jews, persecution of German gypsies and things like that. He was absolutely terrible. Even that he did do a lot of good things to bring Germany back together. Yes, he did. But there's still, even if before he'd started World War II, he'd still done some terrible things.
But I'm not going to say that Hitler wasn't a dodgy bloke, because of course he was a dodgy bloke.
A dodgy bloke.
Yeah. Hermann Goring is a bit dodgy. But you gotta, you gotta, if he had just rebuilt Germany, he would have been a good bloke. But he just, there's so much.
Well, it would have been possible to. I think it would have been possible to rebuild and fix Germany without all of that murder and without.
If we followed Theodore Roosevelt's bloody 14-point plan at the end of World War One, the whole thing never would have happened, and it's so frustrating, you know.
It's terrible.
But hindsight's always 20/20, isn't it?
Well, thanks for giving me the chance to talk about this, guys. I hope I at least slightly slowed down on the ums and the ers. Besides, I think halfway through, I clearly.
Oh, you did a great job, Tom. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, Tom, you did a great job.
Thanks, Gabby. I hope so.
Boy.
And I hope that nobody listening thinks that I was in any way, shape, or form in favor of Hitler. It's just,
there are positives to acknowledge. That's all you're saying.
Exactly. There were positive things that he did do to help his. It wasn't even his country. He was Austrian.
Yes. Yeah. But absolutely, he was indeed.
I just feel like it's an important point to remember that that the only reason he was ever allowed to come to power was because we fucked up the end game of World War One.
Yeah, absolutely.
We really did.
100%.
We wanted to decimate them, and we decimated them right into Hitler.
Yeah, we pushed them right into Hitler's arms, and it's our fault as well. But that's my opinion. It is petty and ill-informed. Thank you for joining us and listening to the show. We will return next week, despite the hopes of many, where, I don't know, we'll talk about something. Don't know.
Despite the hopes of my wife.
Oh yeah, Tom's got a nice, lovely couch to go to sleep on tonight.
It'll be all right. I'll go and apologise. I just got totally carried away and got loud as fuck.
You got excited. It's World War II.
Absolutely.
He got carried away and got loud as fuck. That is
enthusiastic.
The title of Tom's sex tape. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. We will return next week. It's my favourite one-liner, Gabby. I use.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.
Good night.